"Get out! Security, escort this man out now!" Bank manager Linda Carter ordered loudly, her voice slicing through the air like a knife. The tension in Liberty Financial's flagship branch was electric as David Thompson, a well-dressed black man in his 40s, stood calmly at the counter, the withdrawal slip for $75,000 0 cents still sitting between them. The security guards advanced, hands ready at their belts. The entire lobby fell silent. "I've simply requested to withdraw my own money from my account," David explained to the security guard calmly. "I have provided all required identification and have not raised my voice or been confrontational in any way." "We don't give cash to frauds and people like you," Linda insisted, her voice the only raised one in the room. "You're causing a disturbance. Remove him immediately." The security guard grabbed David by the arm, ready to escort him out of the bank, but before David left, he reached slowly into his pocket. Something was about to happen that would change everything. This story delivers the most satisfying karma that unfolds when employees try to throw their own boss out of his bank. If you believe everyone should be treated fairly and respected no matter their skin color, hit the subscribe button now, type "respect" in the comment, and share this story so others can learn from it too. David hadn't always been the CEO. 20 years before that humiliating moment in the bank lobby, he stood behind a different counter, wearing a pressed uniform and a name tag that read "Teller Trainee." His journey from that first position to the executive suite was nothing short of extraordinary. David didn't come from money or connections. What he had was determination, intelligence, and an unwavering work ethic that propelled him through the ranks of Liberty Financial. From teller to loan officer, from branch manager to regional director, David mastered every role he took on. Along the way, he earned his MBA from Wharton, led record-breaking quarters in 3 different divisions, and developed a reputation as the problem solver who could turn around struggling branches. But even as he reached the C-suite, whispers followed him. Comments behind closed doors, concerns not about his qualifications, but about whether major clients would be comfortable with his black skin as the face of the company. Now, standing at this counter, being physically removed from his own bank, all those whispers were becoming shouts. David had been tracking a disturbing pattern of customer complaints. While overall satisfaction scores looked good on paper, digging deeper revealed significant disparities in service quality. The numbers told a troubling story that previous leadership had deliberately buried. Rather than relying on reports and second-hand accounts, David decided to see for himself. The undercover boss approach wasn't just a gimmick. It was the only way to experience the unfiltered reality his customers faced. It was 9:15 a.m. on a Tuesday when David Thompson walked through the revolving doors of Liberty Financial's flagship branch. He had deliberately chosen modest attire, a simple navy hoodie, dark slacks, and a baseball cap. His short natural hair was neatly trimmed and his face clean-shaven, but not freshly so. To anyone looking, he appeared to be a casual middle-class man, not the CEO of the entire institution. David took a seat in the waiting area, seemingly checking his phone, but actually observing the customer service dynamics unfolding around him. What he witnessed in those first 15 minutes was more revealing than 1,000 customer surveys. A white businessman in an expensive suit approached the entrance. Before he even reached the counter, a staff member intercepted him with a smile. "Good morning, sir. How can we help you today?" The man was escorted directly to a desk, bypassing the line entirely. Minutes later, an elderly Asian couple entered. They were directed to take a number and wait. No smile, no warmth, just a pointing finger toward the seating area. A young white woman in casual clothes approached the quick service counter. The teller chatted amicably with her, asking about her weekend plans. Transaction completed in under 2 minutes. Then a Hispanic man in work clothes stepped up to the same counter. Suddenly, there were additional questions, requests for multiple forms of ID, and a suspicious once-over from the teller. His simple check cashing took nearly 10 minutes. David watched this pattern repeat itself 6 more times before he finally approached the counter himself. By then, he had been waiting for 37 minutes, despite the branch being only moderately busy. 3 white customers who arrived after him had already been served. When David finally reached Teller Emily's window, the young woman's smile faltered. "How can I help you?" she asked, her tone noticeably cooler than it had been with the previous customer. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please," David said, sliding his ID and withdrawal slip across the counter. "The amount? $75,000. 0 cents. Emily's eyes widened slightly. She examined David's driver's license, then looked at his face, then back at the license as if confirming they were indeed the same person. "This is a large amount," she said, her voice rising just enough to catch the attention of her colleague at the next window. "Yes, it is," David replied calmly, "but it's well within the daily limit for my account type." Emily didn't respond. Instead, she turned and whispered something to Robert, the senior teller at the next station. Robert glanced over, nodded, and then walked over, positioning himself directly behind Emily, so he towered over the counter. "Is there a problem here?" he asked loudly, not directed at Emily, but at David. Heads turned throughout the lobby. Other customers stared. David felt the weight of every eye in the place, the silent judgment, the immediate assumption that he must be doing something wrong. With remarkable composure, David placed his bank card on the counter alongside his ID. "No problem at all. I'm simply making a withdrawal from my account." Robert picked up his ID, studying it with exaggerated scrutiny. "We've been seeing some unusual activity on these types of accounts lately," he said, emphasizing "these types," just enough to make his meaning clear. "We need to be extra careful." "What types of accounts would those be exactly?" David asked, his voice steady. Robert ignored the question. "Emily, can you pull up the account history, please? Let's see what kind of transaction patterns we're looking at." As Emily tapped at her keyboard, another staff member drifted over. Thomas, according to his name tag, leaned in and whispered something to Robert, not quite quietly enough. "Probably one of those money laundering schemes." Thomas didn't even try to hide his contempt as he looked David up and down, taking in his modest clothing and natural hair with a smirk. "We just need to verify the funds are actually yours," he said with false sweetness. "You understand, right? It's for your protection." The situation was rapidly deteriorating. David maintained his dignity, standing straight, voice unwavering. "I understand the need for security. I've provided my identification and bank card. I'm a customer of this bank and have been for many years. I'd like to complete my transaction now, please." That's when Thomas called over Linda Carter, the branch manager. She strode across the lobby with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned in her life. Her expression was a practiced blend of concern and authority as she approached David. "Sir, I understand there's some confusion about your withdrawal request," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. She didn't introduce herself, didn't ask for his name, just immediately assumed a position of authority over him. "There's no confusion on my part," David replied. "I'm simply trying to access my own money." Linda's smile didn't reach her eyes. $75,000, 0 cents, is a significant amount of cash. May I ask what it's for? This question, one that had not been asked of a single white customer making large transactions that morning, hung in the air between them. The double standard couldn't have been more blatant if they'd put up a sign. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife as Linda Carter stared down at David, her face a mask of practiced concern that couldn't quite hide the disdain underneath. The bustling bank lobby seemed to quiet around them, as if the very air was holding its breath in anticipation of what would come next. "Mr. Thompson," she said finally, glancing at his ID, her fingers holding it by the edges as if reluctant to touch it too much. "This amount doesn't seem appropriate for someone like you. Liberty Financial prides itself on dignity, and we have a class of customers we serve." There it was. The mask had slipped. In those few words, Linda had revealed exactly what this was about. Not security protocols, not banking regulations, just pure, unfiltered prejudice dressed up in corporate speak. Behind Linda, the staff exchanged knowing glances. Emily looked down, seemingly uncomfortable, her hands fidgeting with a stack of deposit slips that didn't need straightening. Her body language screamed discomfort, but her silence made her complicit all the same. Robert and Thomas didn't bother hiding their amusement. Thomas actually snickered, covering his mouth with his hand in a poor attempt to conceal his laughter. "I'm curious," Thomas chimed in, leaning against the counter with newfound confidence now that his boss was backing him up. His voice carried deliberately, ensuring nearby customers could hear. "Did you come into some money recently? A settlement, perhaps? Or maybe an inheritance?" The implication was crystal clear. In their minds, there was simply no legitimate way a black man could have access to this kind of money. It had to be some kind of windfall, some stroke of luck, rather than hard work, intelligence, and determination. David's refusal to be intimidated clearly frustrated Linda. Her professional veneer cracked further as she leaned forward, her voice hardening. "Sir, we have protocols. If you can't explain where this money came from or why you need it in cash, I simply cannot authorize this transaction." "I don't need to explain why I'm withdrawing my own money," David replied calmly. Linda's face flushed with anger. Other customers were watching now, some openly filming the confrontation on their phones. In her mind, this was becoming a public relations problem. Not because of her behavior, but because this man wouldn't simply accept her authority and leave. "Get out! Security, escort this man out now!" she suddenly ordered, her voice slicing through the air like a knife. The two security guards who had been standing near the entrance immediately approached. "We don't give cash to frauds and people like you," Linda insisted, her voice the only raised one in the room. "You're causing a disturbance. Remove him immediately." The security guard, a burly man with a buzz cut, looked uncertain as he approached. David remained completely composed, which seemed to unnerve the guard more than if he had been shouting. "I've simply requested to withdraw my own money from my account," David explained to the security guard calmly. "I have provided all required identification and have not raised my voice or been confrontational in any way." The guard hesitated, glancing between David and Linda. Linda's expression hardened. "Now!" she commanded. With visible reluctance, the guard placed his hand on David's arm. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me." The entire bank lobby had fallen completely silent. Every customer, every employee watched as the well-dressed black man was being physically removed for simply trying to access his own funds. But before the guard could lead him away, David reached slowly into his pocket. Linda tensed visibly as David reached into his jacket. The security guard's grip tightened on David's arm, his other hand moving toward his belt. But David simply withdrew his phone. With incredible composure, he dialed a number as the security guard maintained his hold. "Yes, hello?" David spoke into the phone, his voice professional and steady despite the humiliating circumstances. "This is David Thompson calling. I'm currently at the downtown branch of Liberty Financial, and I'm being physically removed from the premises for attempting to withdraw funds from my own account." The security guard's grip loosened slightly as confusion crossed his face. The absolute confidence in David's tone was at odds with the situation. Linda stepped forward, her patience completely exhausted. "Hang up that phone right now. You're being removed for disruptive behavior, and if you resist, we'll be forced to call the police." David continued his call as if she hadn't spoken. "Yes, I'm still at the downtown branch. They've refused the transaction and have security physically restraining me now." His calm was clearly unsettling to Linda. People in his position, being denied service, being physically removed, were supposed to react with anger or fear, not this unshakable composure. "Sir," Linda's voice rose, all pretense of professionalism gone. "Put that phone away, now!" David turned slightly away from her, still speaking clearly into the phone. The bank's large wall clock ticked loudly, marking each second of the standoff. It was 10:17 a.m., a time that would be recorded in numerous termination documents in the hours to come. That's when David spoke his final words into the phone, words that would change everything in the next few moments. "Stephen, I need you in the downtown branch immediately. Security has their hands on me." The name hit Linda like a physical blow. Stephen, as in Stephen Harris, head of operations for the entire bank. David knew him. David had his direct number. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Linda's face, the first crack in her confident facade. Who was this man, really? How did he have direct access to one of the most senior executives in the company? The security guard, sensing the shift in energy, released David's arm completely and took a step back. In the headquarters building, the executive suite of Liberty Financial suddenly burst into activity. Stephen Harris stood bolt upright at his desk, his face draining of color as he recognized the voice on the other end of the line and realized what was happening. "Get me every customer complaint from the downtown branch for the past year," he barked at his assistant, "and call security. Tell them not to let anyone leave that branch, especially not the manager or any staff members." His designer shoes echoed sharply on the marble floor as he rushed toward the executive elevator, the one that could take him directly to the lobby without stopping. In the adjacent conference room, board members who had been reviewing quarterly projections found themselves suddenly interrupted as security feeds from the downtown branch were pulled up on the main screen. "What's happening?" asked Richard Bennett, the chairman of the board, as technicians scrambled to enhance the audio. "You need to see this, sir," replied the head of security, his expression grim. The color drained from Bennett's face as he recognized the man being physically restrained by security. That's David Thompson," stammered another board member. "That's our CEO." "Yes," the security director confirmed. "And they're physically removing him from his own bank." On screen, they could see it all unfolding in real time. The board watched in stunned silence as their CEO was treated with contempt in his own bank. "Record everything," Bennett ordered, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Every second, every word, and get legal up here immediately." Back in the bank lobby, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Linda began to realize that something was very, very wrong. The confidence drained from her face, replaced by the first flickers of genuine fear. Unknown to her and her staff, the security cameras had also captured their treatment of other customers throughout the morning, the pattern of discrimination that David had witnessed firsthand. Every disparate treatment, every preferential service now preserved as evidence. The grand double doors of Liberty Financial's flagship branch burst open with such force that they slammed against the walls, the sound reverberating through the marble lobby like a thunderclap. Every head turned as Stephen Harris strode into the space, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Release him immediately." His voice carried the weight of absolute authority, not a request, not a suggestion, a command that froze everyone in place. The security guard instantly stepped back, hands raised in a gesture of compliance. Linda Carter's expression shifted from irritation to confusion as she recognized the executive. In the 10 years she'd managed this branch, Stephen Harris had visited perhaps twice, always scheduled weeks in advance, always with a formal agenda. His unexpected appearance, the fury evident in his stride, triggered a visible tremor in her hands. "Mr. Harris, what an unexpected pleasure," Linda stammered, smoothing her hair as she stepped forward with a forced smile. "Is there... you have any idea who this is?" Stephen cut her off, gesturing toward David, who remained perfectly composed amidst the chaos. The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Linda glanced at David, then back at Stephen, confusion giving way to dawning horror. Her mind raced through possibilities. Was he a friend of Stephen's? A relative of a board member? A banking regulator? Stephen approached David, his entire demeanor transforming as he did. The righteous anger he had directed at Linda gave way to profound respect as he addressed the man who had been treated so shamefully. "I am so deeply sorry you experienced this, especially here," he said, his voice carrying throughout the silent lobby. Then he turned back to face the staff, his expression hardening once more. "This," he announced, his voice ringing with authority, "is David Thompson, the CEO of Liberty Financial, your boss." The words landed like physical blows. Linda staggered backward as if struck. Thomas's hand flew to his mouth, his eyes widening in horror as the realization of what he had done, who he had mocked, sank in. Robert's face drained of all color, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed repeatedly. Emily began to tremble visibly, tears welling in her eyes. Even the security guard who had put hands on David looked sick, his face ashen as he realized he had physically restrained the chief executive of the company that signed his paychecks. David Thompson stood perfectly still at the center of this storm, his dignity intact. The weight of the moment, not just for himself, but for every customer who had ever been dismissed, disrespected, or denied service based on their appearance, rested on his shoulders. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, measured, and carried the unmistakable weight of absolute authority. "Linda, Robert, Thomas," he said, addressing each of them in turn, making deliberate eye contact. "You are terminated, effective immediately." No raised voice, no dramatic gesture, just the simple, incontrovertible exercise of power by someone who had earned the right to wield it. "Your actions today have demonstrated that you are fundamentally incompatible with the values of this institution and the legal requirements of fair banking practices," David continued. "This is not a suspension or a performance improvement opportunity. This is the end of your employment with Liberty Financial." In that moment, standing in the center of the branch that bore his company's name, surrounded by the leadership team that had recognized his value, in full view of customers who now understood exactly who was at the helm of their bank, David Thompson sent a message that couldn't have been clearer. Discrimination had no place at Liberty Financial, and those who perpetuated it had no future there. 7 minutes. That's all it took to transform from being physically removed from the bank to exercising the highest authority. 7 minutes that would change Liberty Financial and the banking industry forever. Has this story touched your heart? It's time to take a stand. This wasn't just a story. It was a mirror reflecting the reality that thousands face every single day in America. A reality where your skin color can determine how you're treated, even when you're the CEO. If you want to see part 2, where we reveal what happened to Linda and the others after they were fired and how David transformed Liberty Financial's culture, type respect in the comments below. Your comment matters. Each one sends a powerful message that discrimination has no place in our society. Like this video to stand in solidarity with every person who has ever been judged unfairly based on their appearance. Subscribe now to join our community of advocates for equality and justice. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that could change how you see the world. Share this with someone who needs to understand the reality of discrimination, or someone who has lived it and needs to know they're not alone. Remember, change doesn't happen in silence. Your voice, your action, your support is what transforms powerful stories into powerful movements.